All things in the National Football League. Former Super Bowl winning head coach Brian Billick is back with us, kind enough to join us. How are you, young man? I mean, you got the golf shirt on, but it looks like you're hanging there in Columbus, Ohio. It's snowing here. Is it sunny and 80 there?
No. Thank God for indoor simulators. No, it is. We had a little dusting, and it is cold and chilly up here.
Yes, it is. All right, walk me through, Brian, this time of year from a head coaching standpoint. You got so many moving pieces. I mean, I don't know how anybody keeps track of all of this player movement in the National Football League. As a coaching staff or with your general manager, your days with Ozzie Newsome, or ownership, or your cap guy, are you sitting around almost nonstop right now for 4 or 5 days to figure this whole thing out?
You are, and there is no figuring it out. You know, it's like a Rubik's Cube that's constantly moving, and whatever it is you thought you knew, okay, this is what it's going to take to keep this player or that player, all of a sudden it changes, particularly with the cap expanding the way it is right now. And it's a tough time because you want to keep everybody. And it can be frustrating. And I know Ozzie always used to come in and you know, if you just come in and say, well, this is going to cost this is going to cost that, you kind of think, well, okay, I'm like the government. I'll just keep printing money. It's not my money. I'll just keep spending it. But he would always do a good job of going, well, okay, if we keep player A, we lose B, C, D, and E. And then it becomes very real. So there's that constant balancing of, is this one player worth losing these types of players? Plus, there's opportunities. You kind of focus on the other side. That's where the coaches are right now. I mean, you know who you want to keep, and that's up for the money people to say, okay, can you make those deals within the parameters that fit the cap for us? But for the coaches, you go on the premise that, okay, I'm going to lose some guys. So you're knee deep right now, just coming out of the combine. So you've been very focused on the college players, and you have been leading up to it as well. But right now, you are knee deep in looking at, okay, what's available? If we lose a Vonn Bell, if we lose a Jessie Bates, what's out there in free agency? What's a good deal? Because there will be some deals. And then you balance it with, Ozzie always used to say, I want to make the moves in free agency that allow us to draft and don't have to dictate what our draft is going to be, so that you're reaching for players by position. So there's going to be some deals out there as well.
You know, I mentioned right before you came on that Lou Anarumo said, the defensive coordinator of the Bengals, had said that it would be his darkest day if the team lost both Bates and Bell. I think everybody around here knew Bates was gone after they tried to sign him to a long-term deal. They liked Dax Hill, their number one pick from a year ago, to sort of step in there with Bates. I think everybody felt like Bell would come back. From a coaching standpoint, and I know your side was more the offensive side than the defense, but you had to oversee the whole thing. How much of a roll of the dice is it, theoretically, if you walked into a season with two very young safeties as starters for a team that's trying to get and win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's tough at the safety position. Corners you can cover to a degree because you can isolate them on one side. The safeties kind of have to hold it together, and they have to kind of work in tandem. You know, it's okay if you're doing this, then I'll augment it and I'll do that. And you're obviously communicating with the corners so they know what's going on as well. So that is a tough position. You hate to lose both. You'd like to have one veteran safety, and there are some out there that'll come available. You know, that you look around the league, and Devin McCourty in New England, you know, would be a veteran guy that certainly they might look at. Terrell Edmonds coming out of Pittsburgh. So, you know, there's opportunities out there. But to have both, if they're counting on drafting, which is certainly they're capable of doing, young safeties and them being the starters, to have two young safeties, that's tough.
The last time we talked, you were starting to do a shift, and you admittedly said you did not see this coming when you were doing the radio analysis for the Ravens there at the end of the year when they played the Bengals about the whole Lamar Jackson thing. They give him the non-exclusive tag, which means another team can sign him. The Ravens then have the decision to match that offer sheet or let him go to the other team and they get 2 first-round draft picks. Where do you see all that now after all this has taken place?
It's a predictable move by the Ravens because it's okay. We'll let someone else do the negotiating. Okay, now you don't have to get drawn in with the player. And the eventual, well, I'm being disrespected. And I always love that when players who you're offering 40, 50, 60 million, in this instance, 250, 300 million. Well, I was disrespected by the offer. You disrespect me all you want for 50, 60, 80 million dollars. But now the Ravens can say, okay, we weren't able to come to accommodation. All right, you go have at it. See what the market wants to pay you. And you let someone else do the negotiation. And then you can either match it or, you're going to get the draft choices. Remember the Ravens, their most recent experience in this was negotiating and signing a Joe Flacco after the Super Bowl year. And he bet on himself. He bet on the come and obviously had a great run there. And they gave him what was at the time a big mega quarterback contract. And it never really, he played okay, but never really panned out, really didn't get a return on your investment. And so and I know Steve Bisciotti's very cognizant of this, and they love Lamar Jackson. They'd love to have him back, but they're going to do it within their parameters. And he's going to, they're going to pay him what he's worth. I always remember the Art Rooney story of saying, I don't mind overplaying for good players. I just don't want to overpay for bad players. Yep. And not that Lamar Jackson's a bad player, but they have parameters say, okay, this is what it's worth, and this is what we'll pay. And if that'll happen, this is fair, and this is good for the club, and we can deal with that. If not, and they're pretty disciplined about not chasing deals. You see it more with the other contracts. I remember all the time we come and say, okay, well, this player, it's only going to take us X to sign him. And inevitably it come back X plus. And I'm thinking, well, can we just go the plus? Can we just squeeze a little bit more? And Ozzie and the group were pretty disciplined and going, no, that there's a price to pay when you do that. So we're going to kind of stay within the parameters, and that's one of the reasons they've been so good.
Do you see the Ravens as a team? There was a story yesterday in The Athletic that they believe somebody's going to sign Lamar Jackson. The Ravens are not going to match it. They're going to make a trade to try and go get a quarterback. And in The Athletic it was yesterday, they had Anthony Richardson as a guy that they would move up to the 4 or 5 hole and pick this guy. Do you see Ozzie Newsome as that kind of guy making that deal? I mean, DeCosta laid it out there, their general manager, that they have been a team that will make a trade, but would they make that kind of trade? You know all the people in the room.
They tend not to, but in this circumstance, it's because you can't look at the decisions to keep Lamar, to pay him, to not pay him in a vacuum. Okay, it has to always be, okay, if not, then what? Well, then what is in conjunction with, okay, what do we think of the quarterback market? Can we get that? Now, as we know, that's an iffy proposition. Now, they've been pretty good, in what they've, but hubris can kick in here, and you can be a little not as good as you think you are. Well, we got this figured out. We know how to draft quarterbacks now. Okay, maybe. Because regardless of whether it's Stroud or Young or Richardson or all of them, history tells us that there's no reason they shouldn't be good quarterbacks in the NFL, but half of them are going to fail. So,
well, that was a chapter in your book, which I thought was just fascinating, about the whole quarterback thing and how you think that a guy and this and that, and the 1-year starter thing as opposed to a 2 or 3 year guy. All right, last 2 questions here. This Aaron Rodgers thing, I mean, if we think we've talked about Lamar Jackson, could you imagine being somebody who's trying to follow the Green Bay Packers? This Aaron Rodgers thing, it seems to me, you tell me if you felt the same way. It seems to me that their president, Mark Murphy, who was an outstanding player for a long time in the NFL, it seems to me that they have come to the end of the rope on this thing. And I never thought in a million years that Rodgers was leaving. It's starting to look like Rodgers might be leaving.
Yeah, I think, and there's a lot to do with it. Remember, they've been through this before with Brett Favre. Now they had an Aaron Rodgers in the wings. Whether they think they've got that in the wings or not, or can do adjust to it. The thing that adds to it here, and we all agree, Aaron Rodgers is still a great player, a difference maker, elite quarterback, future Hall of Famer, and still can play. But at this late stage in his career, and with some of the things he's doing, coming out of the dark and all that, you kind of wonder, all right, what are the priorities here? You know, when you had a Tom Brady, when you had a Peyton Manning, and these transitions were in the offing, the one thing you could count on is we know the priorities are right. We know the commitment. If he wants to play, he's committed to play. And right now, is Rodgers there? I don't know. It seems like there's a lot. You know, he flirted with doing the game show thing and all that. I'm not sure where his head is right now, and so I can see where the Packers are going. You know what? This is probably not something we should chase as much as we'd love to keep him. We know he's a great player, but too many moving parts right now, and the aura he's created around him. I'd be a little concerned if I were the Packers or a team signing him. Having said that, now goes to the right team. If he is motivated, he's going to be the difference maker.
All right, Brian, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us, my friend. Great to see you. All the best to the family. Tell Kim hello, grandkids, everybody. Hope you're well, my friend. Great seeing you. Thanks for your time.
All right, man.
Brian Billick, he's the best. He is the best. And he's dialed in on what's happening.